Receiving incoming transmission.
Incoming transmission.
Incoming transmission.
I'm sure you have many questions.
Transmission.
Transmission.
Welcome to Transmission, a weekly show about the most impactful posts from our Meteor JS forums. My name is Ben Strahan, developer at OKGrow, and each week I am joined by Sashko Stubailo, a core developer at Meteor Development Group. Please note, the contents of this show are the sole opinions of their authors. This show is sponsored by Meteor Galaxy Hosting, a containerized cloud service specifically designed and engineered for Meteor app deployment. Learn more at meteor.com/galaxy. This show is also sponsored by OKGrow, an official Meteor consulting partner building full-stack web and mobile apps. Learn more at okgrow.com. Welcome, Transmission fans, to show number 6. This is a special edition. I'm super stoked. We have Matt DeBergalis joining us, and later we're going to have Benjamin on here as well, talking about Meteor 1.3. And as always, we got the bulletproof Sashko with us.
Hey, good to be back.
Yeah. I can't believe that we're at show number 6 already. And we cheated a little bit by splitting up show number 2 and show number 5. Thank you, community, for loving it and sharing it and listening to it. We hit some monster numbers on show number 5. And with that, today, I want to give a big thank you for Matt. Thank you, Matt, for joining us. How you doing, man?
I'm good. Thanks for doing this. You're doing the Lord's work.
Right on. Dude, there's so much passion with the Meteor project, and it's amazing to see how innovative you guys are and then see the passion on the community side. And just like from your point of view, you have to be excited with what you see and how far the Meteor project has come, because this is like a super ambitious JavaScript project. That's like a full stack JavaScript project, man. When you guys were first starting out, did you have any idea that you're going to be where you are right now?
Well, no, and it's even more than Meteor, right? It's just look how far JavaScript's come. I mean, the idea in 2012 when we were talking about writing your whole app in JavaScript, people were like, eh?
Mm-hmm.
And, it's not just Meteor. Look at the rise of all these other ecosystems around view layers, around more and more sophisticated JavaScript on the server. I think about the language itself and frankly, we have a real language to work with.
Yeah.
Ben, who's coming next, is a big part of that. And it's just so different, and you see it in, we spend a lot of time with bigger companies that are starting to see the value, whether it's because they want to build an app quickly and they need it to run on every kind of mobile device that their people already have, or they're seeing how awesome it is when you've got modern user experience in an app, a little bit of real time, a little bit of a dynamic user interface or some sort of collaboration in the app, and they want that in their software too. And just the speed that all this has happened at, where JavaScript isn't a big question mark, it's not scary for those companies. I think it's just really, really awesome. And then inside Meteor, we look around and it's just I think when you set out to do a project, it's got to be rooted in some passion that you've got. And for us, it's always been about how do we make it possible for more people to write better software? And, that's just across the board. How do you get, whether they're weekend projects or giant multinational corporations that are struggling with 20-year-old stuff that just doesn't get the job done anymore? How do we make it easier to use this amazing tool that the world has now, which is software that we can write? How do we make it so that there are far more people who can do it and do it far faster? Yeah,
and I think people are familiar with that story. And they are in love with Meteor. It's been interesting to see the larger JavaScript larger JavaScript communities reaction to Meteor. And I think moving forward in your guys' plans with reactive GraphQL and the data team, and now with 1.3 coming out with module support, and we're kind of integrating more with NPM and opening it up to more of the node universe. I think Meteor's just on the edge of going like mainstream. Like it's going to be just like the no-brainer.
Well, there's two big themes for me. One of them is we're seeing more and more Meteor in these larger projects where you've got a dozen developers, or you've got sub teams within the app. And so a lot of what's in Meteor 1.3 is about very specific requirements that show up once that team starts getting larger and the application starts getting larger. That's what pushed us into the modules work. Obviously, we've got testing that's coming, a long time coming, obviously, but it's a crescendo when you're looking at these larger apps where you just don't have a way to see the whole application at once unless you've got a good testing story behind it. Mm-hmm. Some great work that we've been doing on robustness around mobile and hot code push on all the different mobile platforms. So there's a whole set of things that, if I had to pick one theme for 1.3, it's about professional apps and the things that we keep hearing from our customers and our users about that. And then the other theme is touching on what I was getting at earlier, is getting closer to JavaScript, getting closer to the other ecosystems that are out there. It was never our intent or interest to exclude great JavaScript from Meteor. A lot of what we built early on was because of how early it was in JavaScript land. But as we see great things emerge, whether that's a view layer ecosystem around React, or whether that's new language features and pushing people to write their app using ES6 instead of old versions of JavaScript, we want all of that to be front and center in the Meteor platform. So, 1.3 is also about helping people shift that style of writing an application into a style that's aligned with the modern way to use the language, the NPM package ecosystem, and so forth, because we just see there's so much strength out there when you can bring those things in. It doesn't mean that we walk away from Meteor easy to use, complete story. Far from it. It's more like, okay, I want to use the latest version of Angular, let's say, and I want TypeScript because of that. And that means I want a whole bunch of things in my tool chain that, frankly, aren't available out of the box unless you have an integrated system right now. And that's the kind of thing where I think the Meteor promise of a really appealing, smooth, full story around all the parts you need and all the steps you need when you're building an app all comes together in one place. Yeah,
that's interesting that you brought up the two things I was thinking. One is you're really excited to step into a world where we're now like perceived equals in the node world, whereas before it was like a separate ecosystem. Meteor was. But then you said you also don't want to alienate the people who really like that kind of specialized Meteor culture, pretty much, where everything that they're using to develop their app, or most of the things, are coming from MDG. It's interesting that now we got this tug of war, and I see people having different opinions. I'm of the mindset of I love accepting Node, opening up more to the NPM world, JavaScript world. But on the other hand, I have people I work closely with and says that they're worried about Meteor losing the edge, losing its easiness, because you guys built such a tightly integrated system with Blaze and working like that.
The thing is, there's a bit of a false choice there, because it's no good if you build a easy to use system that doesn't integrate with other critical parts of the ecosystem. I think that in the earliest days of Meteor, that wasn't as much of a concern because that ecosystem was so much smaller.
Right.
But it just doesn't fly, especially, getting back to this professional application and the larger teams. It's a non-starter, right? There's so much great stuff in the NPM ecosystem, for example. If that's not easy to bring in and not something that you can use in an application as you're building with Meteor, I don't think that makes sense. So,
yep.
It's the thing I'd push on is we want the application development experience to be satisfying. We want it to be productive. We want it to feel great.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that means we have to write all the software, far from it. I do think it means we have to make good choices about what software is ready to go. I think it means, for example, Sashko's been working with Tom Coleman and a lot of people in the community on the guide.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen it, guide.meteor.com, talk about something that we should have done a long time ago. There are a lot of technical decisions in that guide because it's all about helping people make a good decision in a short amount of time when it comes to all these questions you run into with building an app.
Yep.
And the vast majority of Meteor, in my opinion, isn't written by us because you see that when you read the guide. It's pulling in community atmosphere packages. It's pulling in a JavaScript style guide from other companies. It's pulling in Babel plugins that are written by the ecosystem. It's pulling in NPM packages for all kinds of things. So that's where I think we can be really valuable, is we can help make some sense of this, just the fragmentation and the dark side of it being such a fast-moving ecosystem is, for a lot of people, it's just overwhelming and it's draining and it's too, you get decision fatigue.
Yes, yeah.
Right? The paradox of choice slows you down. It's no fun to have to be saddled with all those questions every day.
That's the unique selling proposition of Meteor going forward, is all the JavaScript developers that are out there right now, and they have JavaScript fatigue. Meteor going forward is the answer for that. Like, you guys are going to build a tool, it seems like, that you get everything that you want. You get NPM, you get testing, you get modules, you get all that good stuff, but yet it's still one core platform.
Yeah.
And it just makes it a joy to develop.
Here's the other great news. We're not alone in this fight. I was just talking to the Angular team earlier today, and we have a great relationship with them. And Uri, who's on the Meteor core team, has been involved with Angular for a long time. They get it. They want to see the same high quality, thought out experience of what it's like to build a modern application with JavaScript. Mm-hmm. And the more people who see that picture and the more people who value that as an integrated development experience, I think the further and further we can get as an ecosystem toward this vision of making it possible to sit down and select JavaScript as your language and have an app that you're proud of, that solves your problem, on budget if you're in a company, weekend if you're a hobbyist and you're trying to get back to work on Monday, right? Whatever it is, everybody wants it to be a lot faster.
Yeah.
And so I'm really stoked. I feel like this is the year where a lot of the pieces, there've been some great separate pieces out there, but this is the year when it's all coming together, and it's possible now to really look at Meteor the way we'd look at a mature software application platform, that cool. We've had in other languages for so long.
Exciting. And Meteor is going to be at the center of it.
Yeah, and I have another thing to add from just the Meteor guide perspective. The thing that would be the most exciting to me is, we're writing this new application structure guide for Meteor 1.3, which at its core, it's really just a way to take a JavaScript app with a bunch of JavaScript modules and put the things into the right folders, right? In the, hopefully in the coming months, we can take that guide, and anybody who's writing an app in JavaScript, provided they have the right tools set up, which Meteor obviously makes really easy to do, anybody can take that guide, put their things in the right folders, and have a JavaScript app. And you take any JavaScript app, whether it's built with the Meteor tool or whatever other tool, and you're like, I know where the folders go. There's this directory, there's that directory, this is where I put my data, this is where I put my UI components. And that's great. And Aeronota got a head start on that with Mantra. I think Mantra looks at it as, this is a special stack, but I think it can go much wider than that to just, where do you put your directories in a JavaScript app? This is how you do it.
Perfect. Exciting. Talking about moving forward, everyone is excited about Meteor in the future. Passions run high in the Meteor community, which I'm sure you guys are well aware of. And that's actually a really exciting thing. Like when you guys set out, I'm sure one of the desires that you wanted to create was a passionate base of developers. And now you guys got that. So it's almost like a big pat on the back. Sometimes I feel like the community is too passionate. What do you think about like the community and their passion and their desire to get involved, and how the speed of JavaScript and you guys getting your footing on what the future is of everything, like how does that all mix together in the soup?
I mean, I think it's great because the alternative sounds horrible to me. It's really good to see, it's just a story. So early on, we had some mailing lists because I'm old and I didn't know any better. And I think we had 2 mailing lists, and the theory was like one of them was for general talk about Meteor, and the other was about internal design discussions. It turned out they were both for spam, and eventually we had to run to
the Google groups.
Yeah. Yes. So we ran over to Discourse and we said, let's try the forum thing. And really, I think a lot of it started just by giving that kind of structure of the discussion where all this stuff started to flourish, right? And you can have lots of different conversations about lots of different parts of this story, everything from, community building, like in the truest sense. And I don't know if everybody knows this, but Nick Coe, who's here at Meteor, his background is actually in political organizing. So we really value that whole idea of a community building effort and creating a space where people can have these kinds of discussions. And look, I know we're not always the best about, certainly I'm not the best about diving in and spending as much time as I should really in the meat of that. I'd like to do more, but definitely we welcome it. And we think that a lot of what we've learned comes from those discussions. I mean, you look back to, what was it, December, I guess it was, when we were talking about the view layer. Mm-hmm. And what we're hearing over and over again is people want different things.
Yeah.
And, we made some comments on the forum saying, look, what we see here is the rise of some really great, and I got to this point earlier, right? You've got other things happening in JavaScript that are great.
Yeah.
And it'd be nuts not to bring that to the Meteor platform and to help people use those in the most effective way they can. And I'm speaking about, React and Angular specifically. Mm-hmm. And we've had support for those in the platform for a long time. First, there were some Atmosphere packages, and then in Meteor 1.2, we started down the path of integrating them more tightly. In Meteor 1.3, I think we're getting very close to a really solid story there. And we had some theories about the right way to help people take advantage of those. We're thinking, how do you move an app to a set of React components, for example? Maybe part of the answer is we'll build some transition layers, essentially, like a templating system that leverages React but gives you the same Blaze-like experience when you're building templates. And I think it's fair to say the community explained to us why that was wrong. And I don't remember what was that, 500 or 600 messages on that thread later. Yeah. Every one of which we all read. we took a different path. And, the long and short of it is, this is awesome. This to me is the sign of really healthy community. It's also a sign of software platforms have a really broad appeal. We've got people using Meteor in multinational corporations with large teams building sophisticated apps. And we've got people for whom Meteor was their first path into being able to write an app for a friend or for a class project or whatever. And we welcome all of them. That's all great. We're going to have to make some decisions as we go forward with the platform that can't possibly be the best perfect decision for every one of those groups at the same time.
Right.
But I think the only way to really do that is for it to be an open conversation about what's happening. And, I think we should probably spend some time talking about open, conversation at the technical level and about code contributions as well. But for us, at least for me, this is all part of the same story where, I'm really proud every time I go to the forums just to see the sheer amount of discussion, and it's really good discussion. And then you go to GitHub and you see, Sashko's been working on our new data stack that brings SQL to Meteor apps, among many other things. And, that discussion's just been incredible. The different comments that are on the design documents and the pull requests against this stuff is just in the last couple weeks, really spectacular to see. So,
yeah. Going on your last point about how this is going to be just like an organic kind of growth thing, and there's going to be ebbs and flows, and not everything's going to, not all the decisions are going to be great, but the community is there, and the conversation keeps going. I can't think of another project that is similar to Meteor. So it's almost like, in my mind, there's not a playbook to go against. Would you agree with that, or is there a project in your mind that you could correlate Meteor to, a past project? Oops.
There are a lot of open source projects out there. I agree Meteor is unique. I think probably all the projects would say they're unique.
Yeah, I would say that you guys are Meteor is very ambitious. I guess that's just the context that I want to lay out with all the community members and everything, and also with you guys, you guys, we're all in it together. We're building it as it goes. We're figuring it out as we go, because this is a bold new world, and this is a bold new platform Meteor is, and it's all new. So I'm stoked with the future, and it's awesome. I don't think it would be possible to build something so ambitious if MDG didn't exist with how it does in the business sense, and you guys contributing and driving it forward.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of open source projects out there, like Matt said, and there's a really big difference that comes to mind, which you basically just said, and which some people say is a positive and some people say is a negative, which is that a lot of open source projects out there are a project that somebody built primarily for their own use, and most of the additions they're interested in making their project are things that are useful for themselves, which is great because it means that this project is super optimized for a particular use case. One example that comes to mind is Relay, for example, right? Facebook is working on this data thing, and Relay does a lot of stuff, but most of the stuff it does is specifically things that are useful to the Facebook architecture. And I think the place where we really have an advantage in terms of developers using the projects that we're working on and us working with other developers on these projects is that we're coming at it first and foremost from the perspective of making it something that works for a much wider group of people, right? Like the new data stack we're working on isn't something that, on the one hand, we're building it for ourselves because we want to run Galaxy off of it, we want to run our own apps off of it. But on the other hand, we want to start with having an ear to the community of what people need in their apps, and talk to production users that are using Meteor and other platforms and make sure it works for them as well as a starting point and not as an afterthought.
Yeah. So with all this uniqueness that we have as a community, as MDG, as Meteor, and the whole platform that you guys built with Galaxy, the core open source library, and now this data layer that's going to be coming in Reactive GraphQL. there is this undertone, and I think you were alluding to it a little bit, Matt, where there is a divide. There are some outspoken people in the community that says, hey, like MDG seems to be taking the brunt of managing Meteor and the open source part of it, and people are wishing to be more part of that core repo and contributing to it and making PRs. Before you respond, I don't know if you were listening to the earlier show, Matt, that we did last week, but Josh Owens did an article about React and why it's a positive thing to integrate with Meteor. But in his article, he's sourced contributors and the average number of commits per contributor with React and with Rails. And it averages out to like about 15 commits per contributor on average. And with Meteor, it averages 58 commits per contributor. So it shows that like you guys have this burden on you guys that driving it forward. What do you think of that, and where do you see the future going with all that?
Yeah, that's got to change. Not to put too fine a point on it, but getting more of an open source contributor community around the, Meteor is lots of things. It's lots of packages, but let's talk about those core packages that live under Meteor/Meteor. That's got to change. There are a lot of open source projects that don't look like Rails and React, by the way, right? A lot of databases, for example, or I used to work on Unix, they tend to have a fairly small number of contributors that are very close to the project.
That's interesting.
Do virtually all the work. I mean, if you look at the source code for Postgres or MySQL, for example, you will not find a broad base of contributions. You'll find really focused efforts. And the reason is that, MySQL is a great example. It's a very tightly integrated system, and changing the way that tables are laid out on disk has enormous implications for the way that lots of different workloads on the database might run. And I don't think that is necessarily a bad way to run an open source project. But in our case, and I think it's true with a web framework like Rails or Meteor or parts of that like React, it's actually really helpful to have more outside contributions because these things tend to take on a broader set of use cases and they need more features, right? You want your database to have a really core set of features that hopefully doesn't change too much year to year. And if you think about it, they don't, right? They're pretty stable. It turns out it's not what you want in a web framework. You want the latest and the greatest in some sense. You want more options. You want more hooks. You want to be thoughtful about how they all tie together so that the whole thing doesn't turn into a mess. And I think that's a role that we have to play here as the core team. But no, I mean, and the problem, I think, with doing that earlier on for us has been because it's a single repository and because of some of the early technical choices we made around how the different parts fit together, it's actually really hard for people to make a point contribution. Not to say that people haven't done it, but it's a big ask to come in and make a performance improvement to live data, for example. And we really appreciate when we see that, but it's a big ask of the community to do it, especially a pull request that comes with the documentation and the testing and the proof that it's a good change. And it's a lot of work for us to validate that and to work with pull requests, because very rarely is a pull request ready to go on round one for the same reasons. So what we've started doing is step one is to break that repository into smaller pieces. And that means having separate code bases. That's going to do a couple things. One is it's going to enforce better APIs and better modularity between the different parts of the stack. And modules help us a lot there because we can without breaking back compat, we can look forward and use ES6 as the guide for how the different parts of the system should be glued together. And that means we can have, for example, an account system that's really pulled out and separate from the other parts of the stack. And then the other thing is, of course, it really paves the way for what I think is the real prize, which is we very much want external contributors to these things. And it's going to be a lot easier in terms of process, in terms of how much technical know-how you have to absorb, in terms of just being able to track what's going on, if these different packages are more on their own and have a separate set of issues and a separate, README with a separate, potentially a whole different contribution process depending on the piece you want and the contributors that are manning the shop on that front.
That's amazing.
So that's happening right now, and in line with shipping 1.3, I hope that we can crack the door open to a much easier path when someone's got a contribution they want to make, and we can grow that into a contributor that has more of a management role and a maintainer role on these different things.
Very cool. So you talked about splitting it up, and that was an amazing answer. I'm sure people who are going to be listening to the show are going to be standing up out of their chair. And
the repos are coming.
Yeah,
they're all coming.
I wanted to get Matt on this thing, right? Because when I say
right?
you don't believe me.
Yeah, Matt, rally the troops, man. Fire, launch the horn, man. Get the fireworks going. But my question is, you guys have a lot of new things that you're working on right now, and Sashko was telling us how you guys you guys are kind of figuring out the management structure and organizing people into teams, which is great because now you guys are kind of getting into the groove and moving forward into the future. Can you tell us a little bit about the structure around breaking this repo up? Is there a team tasked with this, or what are some actual stuff?
Well, so Sashko and Martin are doing at least that first cut, and we're not, this isn't all going to happen overnight. So
this is huge.
It could be a long night, and we have a lot of coffee here. Actually, the best thing is the core team's all around the world, so the sun really never does set on the Meteor effort, right? And when San Francisco goes to bed, Australia can come online, and then we've got people in Europe, and we started with some early packages that we think are good candidates to pull out. So a bunch of the account system, Blaze. There's some sort of ancillary packages like Spiderable and email that we can pull out. And frankly, those last two, I think probably 1.3 would be the last release with Spiderable because we've got a great option now with our partner, Render. Yeah, it's
very cool.
So we want to start with the things that we know we can pull out that we know have a low surface area or a clean separation from other parts of the system. And then we'll go from there, right? So look, I'll be the first to admit, I don't know exactly how this will go. And we'll learn from it. And then we'll do the next batch. And we'll work on disentangling some other parts of the system. We're working on a new data layer. That means we're going to have to take some of the interfaces that are currently entangled between live data and other parts of the stack. And we're going to have to tease them apart so that you can drop new data into your Meteor app and use them side by side and make that transition if you want to. I think most people will because it's going to be really good. But you can make that transition at whatever pace you want. And you can do it either component by component, or you can do it query by query, or you can do it all in one shot if that's easiest for you, depending on whether you're changing databases or every app's going to be different. So Sashko and Martin are gonna lead that initial charge. We're still, I think the other thing is we want to get a tighter feedback loop. When we think about what a day in the life of a pull request against Meteor. It's not always clear who should be the first to respond to that. We've tried a bunch of different things. We've got a regular, a regular thing where we sit down and look at them as a group. And that team of people has changed over time as people have worked on different parts of the stack. We've got some areas of Meteor that we feel like we can kind of mark as the responsibility of a particular team. So for example, Meteor 1.3, the bulk of the work in Meteor 1.3, certainly not everything, but the bulk of it is around what I think of as like the core platform, language support. And that is, modules. It's the testing that's built on top of modules. We've also got some core platform work around a big overhaul of mobile. So the Cordova versions, WK WebView, a whole new, and I don't know if everyone knows this, there's a whole new native wrapper in 1.3 for both iOS and Android that Martin's written. And this is a little bit of a detour, but it's really cool stuff because it lets us do hot code push on mobile and recover if it turns out the JavaScript is broken, which can happen for a variety of reasons, right? It can be pilot error. It can be a bad transfer when the code gets pushed down the wire. Anyway, the point is a lot of this stuff lives naturally in a smaller group of people, not the whole Meteor core team, but a smaller group like Ben Newman, who's coming on, Martin, who can focus on those areas of the platform. And the more we can do that, the better. But I think what's really going to change the picture is as we break the repository into pieces, we don't have to limit ourselves to talking about people that are on the Meteor payroll. We can talk about the larger community, because what I really want to get to is a place where we think about, okay, you have an issue with accounts. You want to file a pull request against accounts. I think it'd be great if we have a core team for accounts, for example, that is a set of people from different places.
Yeah.
But they focus on accounts. They're not super concerned necessarily with what's going on in the latest changes to the tool to support, async await or whatever's coming on the JavaScript front. Right. The more that we can do, I think what we'll all find is we don't need to have the same story for each of those different pieces of the project for exactly how the maintenance works or exactly what the process is for handling pull requests. I think some parts of the platform are going to want a much stricter requirement around tests, for example, than others. It's just a fact of life, right? The DDP system needs to be very, very simple and well tested. If you want to look at, accounts Facebook and the OAuth plugin to Facebook, you can probably go a little bit faster. And if you want to look at, front end libraries and so on, even faster still. So it's really going to depend.
Yeah. I'm worried about my boy Sashko. So he's doing the data team. He's going to be doing the initial charge of splitting up some of these packages that are easier to split up out of core. He's doing the show. He's doing the guide. Man, you're going to be turning into Aeronota where you got to be like firing up multiple instances of yourself, dude.
Yeah, I mean, the way I'm thinking about it is I think my role in some of these projects is, just like in the podcast, is to be kind of like almost like a community advocate or like an advocate for doing what I think is right, which aligns with what I think a lot of people think is right. Like I don't have to write the whole guide. I don't have to make all the code changes to split out the repos. I just want to make sure that when somebody's doing it, that they're doing it in a way that makes sense and makes sense from outside the building. I think I have been a Meteor for a while, for like a year and a half now, working full time. Mm-hmm. And I remember my first couple of days, I was an outsider, in some sense. Like I'd barely written any apps in Meteor. I'd been writing all my apps in Rails, wrote some stuff in Angular, whatever. And I came in and I was like, dudes, like, what are you doing? All the stuff you're doing makes no sense, like coming from Rails. Like, why don't you have forms or whatever? And I think like the best thing that I've been trying to do for the last 1.5 years is kind of maintain that outsider perspective.
Okay.
Because there's people at Meteor who are working heads down and doing really great work. That doesn't always give you enough time to try to get into the shoes of somebody who's looking at it from the outside, and I want to try to provide that perspective.
That's interesting. Okay, so the two big projects the three big projects, guides, data team, and starting to split up core. Like that's going to be happening asynchronously, and you're going to be not playing as much of a direct role in each of them.
Yeah, so the data thing is the one that I'm really focusing on.
Okay.
Because, like Matt said, it's going to be awesome. It's like
game changer. Yeah.
I think it can change many games for many people, over the next year. So that's the place where I think I can have the highest impact to get something really going. And that also includes some of these concerns, like, how do we start a new project right so that we, avoid some of the things that we're talking about here with Meteor. You start out right with community contributors, some of the core components, open design documents that tons of people have been commenting on, both from inside and outside the Meteor community. Mm-hmm. It's going to be really cool.
That's very cool. And then Matt, you mentioned that Martin's going to be doing, working on breaking out some of those packages. And some people in the community are going to hear that and they're going to be like, oh, but Martin, I heard, was going to be working on React Native. And then there's going to be that tear, like, oh, what's Martin's main role going to be moving forward? So
I mean, the package thing is a quick thing. Like I'm talking about, over the next few days, you're going to see some new repos. And
wow, that's okay.
Awesome. That's someone's got to do it. That's all. So we have there's a lot going on here. If you speak up about something, and Martin's been an advocate for thinking carefully about how to bring more people into the process and how to get more of a culture around requesting and accepting contributions to these packages. It's like, well, okay, you get to work on it then.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned React Native. That's we all think JavaScript's the path forward, and it's really early still. I don't feel like we can go into a larger company, for example, today and seriously argue that they should build their application today with React Native. And that's just because of how early things are. It's not to say that you can't do it. You absolutely can. It's not to say that it doesn't have some big advantages over Cordova. It absolutely does. But when we think about what's coming around the corner, one of the things I'm most excited about is how JavaScript is going beyond the language you use if you're stuck in the browser, and more like it's the language that gets you everywhere you want to be. Maybe I just got to use a trademark violation or something, but
I was just going to say, like, that's a new trademark. You better get it now.
Think about it, right? It runs in the cloud. That's Node. It runs in the browser, obviously. It runs very well now. I mean, when we started Meteor, iOS didn't sign code pages. If you had a web page, if you went to the page in Safari and ran JavaScript, it was fast because it would JIT. But if you built a Cordova app and you ran a web view in your own app rather than inside Safari, if that distinction makes sense, iOS didn't sign those JITted code pages. So you were basically interpreting the JavaScript, and it was super slow. And a lot of people thought Apple did this on purpose, right? That, of course, they want to handicap JavaScript. Everybody should be writing, if you're going to build an app for iOS, you should build it in Objective-C, and that's what Apple wants you to do. It turns out that wasn't the case, right? There are good security reasons to be careful about this. Apple did the work to improve them. And on both iOS and Android, JavaScript has gotten really, really good.
It has.
And then you look at even further out, we've got people using Meteor in IoT. We've got people that build apps for the watch. So there's all these new settings, I think, where you're going to expect an app to be in all those places. And your other option is you're going to write a separate client for every one of those settings in a separate language, right, with a different team. I mean, it's nuts. So we're going to pay a lot of attention to React Native, and we're going to my vision of what Meteor can be as a project is it can help you know when the right time to make that move is.
There you go. And
You know?
so that's answering the JavaScript fatigue then.
Exactly. And there's a lot of stuff out there. Let me go back to what we started with early. We can't get in your way. It has to be possible to use something like React Native or TypeScript or Redux or any of these new cool things that are happening in JavaScript with Meteor today. That's essential. If you're blocked from those things, then the platform can't grow. It can't evolve. You don't attract the professionals that are building really great apps. But it's good, I think, to have some opinions, and this is where the guide comes in, for example, to have some opinions about the best course of action, or maybe call it the default course of action.
Yeah.
And we think it's ready to be the default course of action, and this is how I feel about Blaze and React and Angular, for example. Today, in Meteor, Blaze is really great because you get a whole set of application considerations answered for you thanks to, frankly, more than our work, the community's work. You've got forums,
Absolutely.
You've got schemas, you've got all these other things that have been built on top. And we can help point the direction of, okay, Cordova today, React Native tomorrow. Or Cordova, if these things are important to you, React Native if these other things are important to you.
Yeah. That's amazing. I'm super stoked. I think stoked is going to be the word. That's what you should trademark. How are we going to integrate that?
Having done some trademark work, I don't know if I want to spend the time anymore, but
I'm familiar with it. I've helped some nonprofits do it, and it's unreal, especially dealing with other countries and everything.
Yeah, we just gotta, instead of writing a blog post called JavaScript fatigue, we just write a blog post called Stoked on JavaScript.
Stoked on JavaScript. That sounds. Let's do it, man. Awesome. Well, I think we're wrapping that up. Matt, you've been amazing, man. You've been amazing. Like, I am super stoked about the future. I was really surprised at you saying that, like, keep an eye out, splitting these packages up, or at least starting to, is going to be happening sooner rather than later. Super stoked about that. And it'll be exciting to see after they're split up, how the community grows around those separate packages. You were mentioning just how PRs are going to be handled differently, issues are going to be handled differently, having different rights on the repo for community members and MDG members. That's going to be pretty exciting. That's going to give us plenty to talk about on this show.
And let me be really clear. We want external contributors to all these things. So if you're listening and you're thinking, I've got some pull requests either in mind or I've already filed them on Meteor/Meteor, and I really see a path forward on one of these packages, don't be shy about it. And I think the more of that we see early, the easier it'll be for us to invest more and more energy into breaking these things out, into coming up with, because you can't just press the button and all of a sudden have a bunch of external committers to a bunch of code. That would be chaos.
Yes.
And I don't think that's what the community wants, even if individually a lot of people are thinking, yeah, what I want is more people contributing code.
Yeah.
When you add it up, it doesn't work, right? So but we can push it forward faster by exploring that direction. And I just want to be really clear that that's important to us. It's a high priority. We see it as the fastest path forward, and also the only way to really get the accumulated wisdom of all the different kinds of application development experience that is in the community today.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
and the cool thing is going forward is you do have that base of really knowledgeable people out there in the community. And so guys, step up as you see these packages break out, put your hand up and throw your hat into the ring. It's going to be really exciting. Blazing the path forward. That is exciting. So Matt, going forward, I heard that you might be down for joining us on future shows.
Yeah, happy to.
Super awesome. Thank you for your support of Transmission, man.
Like I said, thanks for doing this. This is a really valuable way for us to be able to talk more about what we're thinking, with everything going on and all the different things we're pressing forward with. It's good to have a way to just have a conversation about it. So
Totally.
not just me, man. Everybody here is really eager to share more of what they're thinking and what they're working on. I hope we have a chance to talk about reactive GraphQL work that we're doing. There's all kinds of amazing stuff, and that's happening day by day. I don't know if a weekly show's enough for that. We didn't even talk about some of the other stuff. There's, Galaxy, for example, and
Right.
the way people are running applications is super interesting. There's
I want to touch on testing in the future too.
I was going to say there's Meteor 1.3 right around the corner, and I think I'm going to give a talk at Meteor Night next week about Meteor 1.3. So,
Nice.
nothing in there is a surprise. We've been talking about it, but it's been in different places on the forum, different GitHub threads. So I just want to roll all that together into a picture of why that's the set of stuff that's in there, and then where we're going after that, because there's a lot of exciting work. I mentioned NPM. We're looking at a whole bunch of different things that tie into this idea of professional apps, more tie-ins with the JavaScript ecosystem, more flexibility to use those things, but more opinions about the best way to use a certain set of them, depending on what you're trying to do. So, yeah, talk about. Very happy to do it. Really, really thrilled that you're doing this.
Very cool. Thank you. I'm looking forward to your talk now, because this new day and age that we're moving into with the community and MDG, I really see you guys as like facilitators of a vision. And so, and that's what you kind of just said, like where 1.3, what 1.3 is and where that's taken us in the future, like that's what we need. Like lay down some of those golden bricks, and then everyone huddle around it and like get it done. That's exciting. So Paul Dowman and I are probably going to be coming out in the spring. We should probably do a live show.
Oh, that'd be sick.
That would be awesome, man. Very cool. All right. Well, guys, stay tuned. We're going to be having part 2 of this show with Ben Newman coming on, which is going to be super exciting. Thanks again, Sashko and Matt. It's been awesome, man.
Cheers.
Transmission.
Welcome, everyone, to part number 2 of show number 6. Part number 1 was amazing with Matt and Sashko. It's super awesome, and we are not going to let up. This show is just going to accelerate more and get even more exciting. Ben, welcome to the show.
Okay. Hi. Cool. Yeah, I don't want to.
And Sashko, welcome to the show. Your computer's doing crazy stuff.
Great.
So Ben, thank you for joining us. I'm so excited. This show is like so star-studded, and your name is Ben, so like you automatically get like amazing points for that. Like your parents did a great job picking your name. So Ben, tell us a little bit about yourself and your history and where you came from. You got like an exciting past.
Yeah, at least professionally. I worked at Mozilla, and then Quora, the question and answer website, and then Facebook, where I got to work with the Instagram team and then the JavaScript infrastructure team. And that was a fun career arc because the Instagram website was one of the first major properties within Facebook to use React as a client. And then the JavaScript infrastructure team was the team that released it as open source and maintained it. And I met Jeff Schmidt at JSConf 2 years ago, where I was giving a talk about another project that I worked on at Facebook called Regenerator, which is a transpiler for ES 2015 generator functions. And he asked me to give the same talk at Meteor while I was in the Bay Area. And I did that, and that started a conversation about working at Meteor. And I ended up deciding to leave my job at Facebook and work on similar, but well, I won't make any value judgment here. I liked both jobs, and I'm glad to be able to work on such interesting stuff at Meteor. I'm on the platform team with Sashko, and we work on things like the command line tool, which used to be the main work of the Meteor development group. Now there's things like Galaxy that are like exciting new developments at the company. It feels like a much bigger place now that not everyone is just working on core like Meteor platform stuff. But I am still working on that stuff, and in particular trying my hardest to implement a module system that will make everyone happy. So,
woohoo! And we're going to touch on that. I'm curious though, what attracted you to Meteor and MDG?
Never having to write PHP again was a big thing.
Awesome.
I like also the freedom of being able to work remotely, and that a company can let people work remotely and kind of just check that box, but to make working remotely actually work for the people who do it and for the people who have to video chat with them is pretty difficult. And Meteor does a really good job of that.
Yeah. I work for OK Grow remotely. I think we have like 3 guys that are remote on the team. And there's definitely a wrong way to do it and a right way. And I definitely appreciate OK Grow and everything that they do to make that work. And you've been with, coming back to you, you've been with MDG for over a year now, right? Yeah. Before the show we were talking about it. That's wild.
That's right.
Very cool. All right. So tell us about the exciting things coming in 1.3.
1.3 is exciting for me because it finishes off, I think, the support that we began providing for new ECMAScript language features in 1.2. It was a good story with 1.2 that you could just run Meteor add ECMAScript and suddenly use all these new syntaxes and polyfills. But there were a couple of big things that were missing. The biggest ones in my mind are a module system, which I think is the single most important new feature of the language. And I gave a talk at Empire Node about that claim earlier this year. And generator functions, and more importantly, but building on generator functions, async functions, which is a more convenient syntax for working with promises and asynchronous code. And we didn't provide either of those things in 1.2. So in my mind, that was a big shortcoming. I'm glad that there was value in 1.2 without those things, but there's so much more value in a complete offering where complete is defined by whatever we can transpile with Babel. So from my perspective, that's a big part of what's exciting about 1.3. For people who use Meteor as a mobile app development framework, and that means using Cordova, we're also catching up with latest versions of iOS and Android. That may or may not be in 1.3 proper, but if not 1.3, then it will certainly be in like 1.3.1 immediately after that. And so those are those are 2 of the 3 big things that I'm excited about. The third big thing is that we're finally making it like not just possible technically in some sense to write tests for your application, but actually easy and straightforward, and so straightforward that the skeleton app that gets generated when you type Meteor create my app will include a test that runs on both the client and the server that exercises your app. So it'll be completely obvious how one should go about writing tests, not just of Meteor packages, but of application code. And that enables us to say that Meteor is a great tool for professional software development and really mean it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And
there's just one story in particular for me where I remember I was looking at a class at MIT and they were starting to teach JavaScript in that class, and they were looking at Meteor. And the professor was like, look, I was just about to pick Meteor to teach this to all of my MIT students who are learning web development, but I couldn't because there was no good testing story. Now I could finally go back to that professor and be like, look, you make all your students' lives a lot easier by just using Meteor now. That's like the most exciting feature for me in a long time.
Yeah, 1.3, I believe that it's a turning point, and there's it's almost like the floodgates are going to open up, and some of the things that really bugged developers in the past that prevented them from adopting Meteor, like that stuff is going away now, and opening up to a larger ecosystem, official support of tests. I mean, it's awesome. It's awesome. We're going to see, I'm predicting right now, we're going to see our community grow by over 50% by the end of the year. I'm going to say that. We're going to see. Any of you guys want to bet me a different number?
Well, I think our official estimates actually beat that number.
Ooh.
But we'll see. I don't think we make those public.
Okay, it's on. Oh, you guys do estimate. Cool.
Well, I mean, we're a company, right? We have to estimate everything.
Yeah.
That makes total sense. Yeah.
We like drawing curved lines through graphs as much as anyone.
Oh my gosh, that what was it in Jeff's talk? Was that like the number of Stack Overflow questions marked by the releases? That was in Jeff's talk? Holy cow, that if you guys project off that, then you're going to be almost vertical. That's going to be wild. Exciting times. Oh my goodness. Since we touched on testing and the community had some questions about it, we didn't get to it with Matt. Ben and Sashko, could you guys talk about the differences between what velocity was and how that differs in what's going to be provided in 1.3?
Sashka?
So velocity, first and foremost, is a way to test your app. I mean, I guess it's a pretty obvious statement, but I don't think velocity is really about like the machinery or like the test runners or anything like that. It's about being able to take the code that you wrote for your app and then write some tests that check if that code is correct without having to necessarily go through a lot of hoops of splitting your app up into packages or like changing all of your code so that it's testable. Because you could already kind of test Meteor apps, you just had to put in like an inordinate amount of effort to make everything into a package, which was really unfortunate. So in Meteor 1.3, it's going to be super awesome. Like you just write some code. It'll be especially easy if you write your code using the new module syntax, but you don't have to be able to write tests. And then you just, in the same directory or whatever directory you want, you just throw a file that ends with .tests.js. And then you just write whatever test you want, and then it will run when you run a certain command, Meteor test app, I think it's going to be. And you can decide whether you want the rest of your app to load or not load. So it's kind of the difference between like a unit test and integration test. We're also going to have a lot of recommendations in the Meteor guide about how to run end-to-end tests.
Very cool.
That's not going to be a Meteor feature, but that's just going to be recommending specific approaches. And I hope the end result is, like Ben said, it'll be completely straightforward to write all the tests that you want to make sure your app is going to work now and in the future when you make changes.
I'm super stoked. I'm way looking forward to 1.3 being released and the guide supporting those things. It's just going to be awesome.
Yeah, and one thing to mention is, while it's still an open question, I think, whether velocity itself will work with Meteor 1.3, but we expect it to be pretty simple to take the tests you've written that are written against the velocity test runners and run them using the new system, right? Because we just need to have the correct test runner for Mocha, for Jasmine, for Cucumber, and then you can just use all of your existing tests.
Very cool. So that was like that was a big comment that you said there where, it should work, right? And you said that because backwards compatibility is like a huge importance to you guys. Ben, could you talk a little bit on the challenges of backwards compatibility with 1.3 and implement modules?
Yes. Backwards compatibility is a pretty serious constraint that we have. And I guess the wider context here is that some of the solutions that Meteor has come up with since it got started as a project, like compiler plugins and the packaging system with the constraint solver and importing what look like global variables automatically into your, not even modules, but just files of JavaScript. Those all seemed like pretty reasonable designs when we were coming up with them. But a lot has changed in the several years that have passed since then. And that we want to be able to take advantage of and exemplify best practices that have emerged in the community. But we have a lot of users, obviously, who have written apps that work within the systems that we originally imagined. So I think it's an important accomplishment, maybe the thing that I'm proudest of with the modules project, that you still get that whole system of packages and their special Meteor package capabilities, like loading different code on the client and the server, so that you can kind of like set up both sides of, say, your like accounts server and accounts client separation. Like that's just a cool thing you can easily do with Meteor packages that it would be more difficult to do with NPM packages.
Right.
But you still get all of that, and in particular, code that you wrote, assuming those features will still work. But you have the option now of bringing variables into the scope of your modules, and the files that you write in your app will actually be modules with their own scopes, rather than just sort of like a concatenation of separate files. So if you want to refer precisely to some login method on the accounts namespace, then you don't have to guess where that's coming from. You can import Meteor/accounts base. The specific incantation, I don't know, I would have to have a concrete example here to say something that is actually true. But you don't have to rely on that system of automatic imports. You can, as people have been doing with Node apps for some years now, you can import specific modules and access specific properties that they provide. So if two packages or two modules provide the same variable, then it's not a matter of like which one loads first. It's a matter of which one you specifically asked for. You can get a version of that variable, and there's no competition over a single namespace.
And to build on the incantations that Ben is talking about, Tom and I are actually putting in some work because we've kind of decided for ourselves with the Meteor guide that the thing that we want to recommend in Meteor 1.3 is that you do know where all of these variables are coming from. So one interesting artifact of the previous ways that you use Meteor, which still work, of course, in Meteor 1.3, but we think it's better, instead of having you load the account's password package and have that attach like meteor.loginwithpassword, we think it's going to be better to have you import something directly from account's password, right? So for example, the thing we're going with right now is you import a symbol called accounts password from accounts password, and you call accounts password.login or something like that. But the point is, now you can look at your code, look at a certain file or module in your app, and actually know which package that's using. Because before, when you look at meteor.loginwithpassword, it's not at all clear if that's the accounts password package. Maybe it's some hacked version of the package that somebody else wrote, right? There's no way to really tell where your code is coming from. And it's super important to be able to do that.
Yeah, we just came across, we just started a new app or a new contract consulting with a pre-existing Meteor client. And this app needed to use two different email providers. And right now how everything is global, like that's kind of impossible to do. But with 1.3, like we can import the email client that we want, or the email package that we want to use, depending on that part of the app. And so like that's an example of the flexibility that we weren't able to have before, and now we're going to have. That's exciting. Plus, it like gets us a little bit more normal in the world of JavaScript. Ben, big thank you, man. I really enjoyed going through your slides, explaining the difference between CommonJS and ECMAScript 2015. That just, I don't know, there was a couple moments in there where like it was a light bulb moment for me. And it's exciting. It's exciting to see where JavaScript's going, and then that Meteor is right there. Whereas before, other people kind of shied away from Meteor, thinking like, oh, it's doing things that aren't common in our industry. And now, like you guys, we're moving to the forefront.
Yeah. One other really important thing about modules that sort of gets overlooked among all the other exciting things is that until 1.3, the order in which the files in your app executed was this like governed by this arcane set of rules. It had a little bit to do with alphabetical order, you know. So sometimes if you really needed one file to load before another one, you renamed it so it came earlier in the alphabet.
Yeah, or you just like do deeper nested folders.
Right. Yeah, there was a whole system, and you could play by the rules and get what you wanted, probably. But modules solve that completely, right? Because if you need the side effects or the exports of another file to happen or be defined before your file executes, you just import that other file. And then it doesn't matter what order the two files are technically like loaded in. Like the one that needs the other one is going to make sure that the other one has done its thing first. That whole problem of specifying file load order, which is like a zen that people who use Node and CommonJS know so well that maybe they don't even like acknowledge how cool it is. Like it just load order falls out of import order, and you just don't even have to worry about it. You can quickly solve any load order problem by importing another module.
I think that's why I appreciated your presentation so much that I went through, because it explained it just in a common sense kind of way where it could get complicated and messy. So, so Webpack is really hot. I don't know why. I mean, I know why, but it's a pain in the butt.
Sure, yeah. I mean, when it's set up properly, you know, when it's working for you, it can be a transformative developer experience. And you know, we're all about developer experience at Meteor, so that we appreciate that.
I have zero experience with Webpack 2.0, but other people in the forums really wanted to get your input on it.
Sure.
And I don't know if you had a chance to look at it and it can tell us if it affects the future of Meteor or whatnot, or what's cool about it, what's not cool.
Yeah, there are a couple of really cool things about it. In a post that I wrote about like why we had decided against building on top of Webpack as like an implementation strategy for our module system, I said some things about the APIs that Webpack provides, specifically for hot module reloading and code splitting. Those are based around, well, one is based around a property of the module object, which is a thing that is a variable that is made available to every module by CommonJS. The module.hot object, if it's defined, is what you interact with to control what happens if either the current module or one of its dependencies gets hot reloaded. And code splitting, which is this idea that you don't bundle everything into one big monolithic bundle, but into separate chunks, and you might be able to like wait and load some of them later if they're not in this particular URL, or like they're related to a settings interface that you really don't click on in the course of interacting with the app.
Right. Or like you got a front end and a back end, or you have a mobile app and a web app.
Yep.
Or even a desktop app. Yeah.
Exactly. And that was based around, in Webpack 1, this API called require.ensure, which was sort of an asynchronous version of require. And so that, again, is a great solution within the context of CommonJS and assuming that you have these sort of global-looking variables, require and module. But there's no plan for the require function or the module object to be like made globally available to ES 2015 modules. So like it's a good solution for now, but we have to wonder like what is it going to look like when we don't have those convenient objects to hang random APIs off of. And so Webpack 2 is exciting to me in one way because they decided to stop using require.ensure and instead use system.import. And so system, capital S system, is an API that is going to be part of ECMAScript for the long term. And so that's cool. So, now at least you were going to have to use some sort of like global variable magical API, and now at least it's one that's going to stick around for a while. So I think that is a pretty future-proof decision. The system API is not completely like nailed down yet. I would love to see a version of it where you could run a callback once all the modules you might want to import were installed but not already evaluated. With system import, as you might imagine, you pass it a module identifier and it returns a promise. And by the time the promise callback fires with the result, like that whole module has been evaluated already. So you don't have the option to say, I might or might not actually end up requiring this module or importing this module. Whereas require.ensure was a pretty cool API in the sense that the callback got passed a require function, and then you got to call that, and it was just guaranteed that it was safe to pass it any of the identifiers that you had passed to require.ensure. Okay.
Very cool.
That's a pretty detailed analysis of that choice. It feels like progress to me.
Okay.
System.import is a more future-proof alternative to require.ensure, and so I'm happy about that.
What does that mean for Meteor?
So, yeah, you might think that it would add another argument for switching to something like System.js. System.js is a polyfill for that system API, and it is definitely an acknowledgement by the Webpack team that like we're all headed in the same direction. And I think once the system API is fully specified, that's something that's being worked on by the WG working group rather than TC39. So it's not like explicitly part of the JavaScript standard, but it will be part of a standard. I think once that's like natively implemented in any browsers, it will begin to make more sense for us to swap out the whole like Meteor install API for something that's based on System.js. And
Okay.
that will be a straightforward transplantation, I think. In the meantime, though, like polyfilling just system.import so that you can use that syntax and get all the benefits of asynchronous module loading, we could do that pretty straightforwardly.
Ah, okay.
Right?
So hot module loading is on the radar for coming, hey?
Yes, absolutely.
Whoa.
Yeah, code splitting is cool. It's great if you have a lot of JavaScript to slice it up and not load all of it. Hot module reloading is sort of a different thing. It's just a developer experience productivity hack, and a really important one. Like, I don't know, the fact that Meteor restarts the whole server and has to do a lot of caching so that is quicker than it would be if we rebuilt everything.
Yeah.
That's all well and good. We can optimize that until the cows come home. But if we had a way to send down individually changed modules, maybe over DDP, then the turnaround time would be next to instantaneous. Like whether or not the modules were even like intelligently hot replaced, even if we just dumped out like the whole module system and reloaded everything without reloading the browser, then hot module reloading would make things a lot faster. So as far as I know, in Webpack 2, there's no new alternative to module.hot, but by the same reasoning that I just used, that if you really have to, you can provide a polyfill for system.import. If we really have to, if there's no better alternative, we'll definitely provide a polyfill for module.hot.
Very cool.
If that means, yeah.
So we're going to get 1.3 out. It's going to have module support, but all the really amazing features that people really like in Webpack is on your guys' short-term radar to provide for us, right? Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, so code splitting and hot module reloading,
which are the big ones, yeah,
are definitely the really big ones. Depending on who you ask, Webpack loaders are also a great thing about Webpack, and they are if you've bought into that system. I don't mean any judgment there. It's just no,
I'm laughing because I
you think they're great if they work for you, and
yes.
That's how everything is. We have an ecosystem that is somewhat analogous to that in the form of our compiler plugins, and so I would really like to see those continue to work for people and for compiler plugins to make a lot of sense with the module system. The same way that Webpack loaders make tons of sense with the Webpack module system. So I don't want to give short shrift to what other people may think is another exciting feature of Webpack, but we're trying to provide all of those benefits one way or another in the short term.
That's exciting. We're just about out of time. This is going to be a little bit longer of a show, but I wanted to get your input on Rollup.js.
Yeah. I actually had drinks just last night with Rich Harris. So this is a fortuitous topic to be discussing.
Rich Harris is the maintainer, right?
Yeah,
yes,
yeah. If you can give a broad overview, because I'm sure there's probably a larger percentage of people listening that will have no idea. Fruit roll-up, you're thinking probably?
Yeah, right. So what Rich realized is that ES 2015 modules, the import and export syntax, are a lot more statically analyzable than require and exports, the common JS module API. And what does that mean? Well, it means that without running your code to see what happens, you can tell a lot more about what is getting imported. And whether something of that name is even exported by the thing that you think you're importing. And the really cool thing that enables is suddenly you can tell at build time that something that is exported, say by underscore, some one of or several of the methods in that long list of helper methods that underscore provides is actually never used. No one as in your app doesn't care about most of those probably, and that creates this awesome opportunity where you can just rewrite the library that you're importing from so that it doesn't even have the code that defines those things. And so you end up with bundles that are just fractions of the size of bundles that you would get from Browserify or Webpack today, because the power of dead code elimination is so much increased by that static analysis. So that's great if you're totally bought into import and export, and you're no longer using CommonJS. And Rich tells me that at The Guardian, the newspaper where he works, they use Rollup for everything, and their module system is fully ES 2015 compliant, which is awesome. But that feels like an unfortunately distant future. So for a lot of people's existing apps, the idea of converting everything to use ES 2015 modules instead of Common.js, just so that you can use this futuristic tool that does an amazingly better job of dead code elimination, is just not quite worth the effort yet.
Yeah.
But it's a glimmer of what might be coming. Yeah.
Do you mean like the JavaScript community, the Node community, but you don't particularly mean the Meteor community when you say that, right? Because like modules are new for us, and now we are going to have the import export. So like for our ecosystem, would that work for us?
Well, I mean, there is some hope of it working in a partially converted code base. Like if everything that imports a particular module does so with import syntax.
Everyone, it's Friday night, man. And Ben, it's late, and Ben is in New York, so it's even later for him. And so we're like,
all right, come on in.
He's basically saying that Sashko and myself we can't be his hot date for Friday night.
My girlfriend's parents are coming to stay with us, so that is the excitement.
Very cool, very cool. Yeah. Awesome. So like Rollup.js is pretty cool, but like you said, it's kind of like a distant future. It's just like, it's like a concept car when you go to the auto show.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's the kind of thing that like end-to-end framework like Meteor could provide like as soon as that becomes, whereas you're cobbling together a bunch of tools and hoping that they work, like it may or may not be an easy thing to fit into your build pipeline.
Very cool. Very cool. All right, guys. Well, I think I'm going to wrap up the show. We're overdue on time. Sorry for it being so long, but we had just like such amazing content. And I want to thank Matt and Ben and Sashko. Enormous contributions to the show. Thank you very much. And an overflow of content. So we are going to definitely have Matt and Ben back on the show, and hopefully introduce other team members of MDG and their amazing crew. So guys, until next time, make sure to go out and build amazing things with Meteor.
Transmission complete.